The triangle of trauma, we talk about the aggressor and we talk about the victim. But what we neglect to talk about a lot of times is the witness. And that's the truth of what's happening right now is we are all witnesses to what is happening in our world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. This is November the 11th, 2022. We got what?
Today's November 10th. It's Thursday.
Oh, this is not the 11th.
Correct.
11th is Veterans Day.
That's tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you for your service, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That is cool. Yes, he is the in-house Navy man, the self-proclaimed, right?
Anchors away.
Yes, I love that about you.
Haze gray and on the way.
Well, I apologize for the missed date. But anyway, let's moving on to, we are going to be talking about politics and your mental health. Now, you'll know the date as the 10th, which is exactly 3 days post the last election. This show will come out maybe a week or two from today, so you will have had a little bit of time to digest this topic. I imagine coming back down from whatever terrible time you've probably had. This topic will be fun, I think. I don't want to out you if what your reactions were funny though. Do you want to say what your reactions were when you found out this topic was here? I just thought that was funny. No. And that's the reaction.
I said, "Oh God."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I did say something that was like a really funny meme on the internet. It was like, I just feel like we're in a custody battle waiting to see which parent wins.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, truth.
As
That's
the politics
so true.
nowadays
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Indeed. More on that in a bit. So this is where you get insights from therapists in personal time in your car and at home, recognizing it's not delivery of therapy services in any way. I do have the 3 questions I want you to be thinking about during the show. Politics, really, is it good or bad? I think we're going to talk about that and arrive at a conclusion. Have you thought about what they even really are? Like, what is it to be political? I think, a little foreshadowing, there's a little stereotype, and a little bit of myth, and a little bit of shading, a little bit of jadedness that we've gotten to on that. And then, have you thought about, really, what do you do to cope? How do you deal with the stress? I think we can all agree it's stressful, thus your reactions even to the show topic, right?
It can be.
So, it's thinking about how do you deal with the stress around you, even in the way of different conflicts and disagreements that you have in your personal life, because we do that on a macro scale when it comes to politics. That is the things I want you to be thinking about. So, got the book still out, Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. Do subscribe to the show. It helps us a lot. Do click to share the show. It helps a lot. 5-star reviews, never 4, John. That's a bad thing, right?
Right.
Always got to be 5.
5 stars.
4 is above average, though.
Well, that is true.
But 5, that gives you that oomph.
But if you want us to really pay attention, give us a 2 and we'll respond. No, I'm just kidding.
Dear God.
Don't do that. And the YouTube is new for us and a lot of our listeners. So it's just like Facebook. You hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell that pops up the live when we come up on that as we develop that. Contact at throughatherapist'seyes.com is the way that you can interact with us. This is in the political world. The human emotional experience that we do endeavor to figure out together. Like, I think, can I start from the get-go and say, like, this is something that we need to figure out, the emotional experience with politics?
Sure.
Definitely.
It has gotten, it feels like, to a degree when we all endure this experience. I don't find, like, I remember years ago when I started as a young clinician, there was this lady, and she would look at the politics and the election cycles as like the Super Bowl. Like, she didn't like the sport. She didn't do, much with that. And this was like their big thing. They enjoyed it.
So my secondary primary degree is political science.
I did not.
It is.
Oh, fantastico.
Yeah, I was going to be an attorney.
Really?
Yeah, we see how that worked out.
I could so believe that.
You're very eloquent.
Believe that.
I think you'd make a great attorney.
Thank you.
She could make a case.
She could make cogent and very direct.
Or she
Clear
is a
and
case.
cogent evidence.
Yes.
You didn't hear me.
Pardon?
I am a
I'm
case.
sorry.
Yes.
A
You're a
case of
case.
what?
She can make a case, or
Yeah,
she is a
it's
case.
Yeah.
I'm
Case
Kasie.
of what? You are Casey. Nice to have you back this week,
Casey.
by the way.
Thank you so
Are you
much.
feeling better, ma'am?
I'm feeling great.
That's cool. On the show, we have 4. You can see with the cameras, we have 3. Miss Victoria is ill. Everybody seems to be getting ill now that we're back out in the world, right? Like,
Boost our immune system.
we need a boost.
Yeah.
Have some orange juice or something.
Or a LaCroix Limoncello, or
Indeed. So I'm going to start out with a first little segment on just some random thoughts that I have had. And, it's funny. On the show, if you followed the show for any length of time, we used to have me and Craig doing the show. And I would like to say to him when we did current events or something, I'm like, Craig, let's get political.
Yeah.
And he would brace for impact. And, we would go on to do the piece that was important at the time. But
Let's get political.
instead of physical.
Physical,
I
yeah.
love it.
So,
Me and John are on the same wavelength tonight.
vibing.
We are. We are vibing together. We have discussed off air Bruce Willis and our favorite Christmas movies being Die Hard and The Gremlins. So,
amen.
What
and
do I
amen.
do with that?
whoop, yippee-ki-yay.
John, I'm gonna let you break out in song on a special day and do the whole song. We're gonna make this a karaoke for you.
Okay.
I'll be like, it'll be like,
I can
you
sing
can be
in the
Gladys
choir.
Knight and I can be the Pips.
He is so down with that. All right, so let's get to these thoughts, random thoughts. Do you have any random thoughts though, off the get-go, that of a serious nature when you heard what we're talking about, how we're gonna go about this? Like, what is your genuine kind of like, gut feeling with this topic?
I think for me that I feel like the most dangerous person is the misinformed person, not the uninformed and not the informed, but the misinformed.
Oh, wow. We could go away with that for sure. A little bit of that going around.
Yeah, the conspiracy theories, I think. And that's to add to what you were saying.
Sure.
I think it's the misinformed.
Yeah. One of the random thoughts that I have was not so random. I've been thinking about this. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this on the show, like, I don't want to shy away from the uncomfortable topics that we have in mental health. I feel like, I think somebody alluded to it when we were talking a little while ago, like, oh God, like, are my clients going to be upset? Or, do I let my personal views be known? Or how does this work? Like, I think people are terrified at this point. Like, so much so that I have been aware that probably in the last 3-4 years, right? Maybe it goes a little bit further back than that, but really I think, and this is nothing about Trump per se to make a statement, but this has come up as a legitimate, full-fledged, therapeutic, clinical issue in my sessions more than I've ever experienced before since 1995 doing therapy.
Oh, well, I would agree
Yeah.
in my experience
Like,
as well.
what is that?
Just yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, just yesterday.
Yeah. John, I don't understand that. I really kind of don't. I'm not going to lie. Like, the emotions that are in it for people, the
Well, it's
experience.
almost a religious experience because you had a client 20-some years ago, I suppose, who was treating it like football, for example, as a Super Bowl.
Well,
But I
yeah.
think it's gone beyond that. I think it's more in terms of, I think as the influence of religion and religious faith has decreased in our society, in our culture, I think something had to fill the void, and I think it's the almost a religious
Wow.
holding on to tribals, the tribes. And so either you're red or you're blue, and you belong to that tribe, or you don't. And then there's a third tribe, which is actually larger than either the red or the blue, and that is independence.
It's funny that you put it that way, because I heard somebody talking on the radio program somewhere, and they're like, oh, you're one of those people, a split ticket person. And I thought, holy crap, wait a minute. maybe I'll live under a rock. I mean, I get into my own world and kind of just put my head down a lot. I do that somewhat on purpose for just personal, I don't know, protection and whatnot. But I really thought it was rare that people would like just click, the single ticket vote party down the line.
They sorted you into a category, didn't they?
Well,
You're a squish.
what the heck? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I don't even understand.
Well, that's more on the Republican side, I guess. A squish is somebody that's, let's say, would be more moderate. But I guess there's squishes on the blue side too, on the Democrat side.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, if you think about it, in a two-party system, they want you to do that because, even in primary elections, if you register as unaffiliated, you have to select which primary you're going to vote in.
Oh, yeah.
So really what it is a chasm to keep us to a two-party system and not let a third party infiltrate that system. That very rarely you'll see Senate seats that come open that independents will win. But for the most part, they want you to vote either in the Republican or the Democratic primary.
As an American Studies major in college, I was going to be a lawyer as well, is that parties are not in the Constitution.
Correct.
Right.
And
they've adjusted over the years. People forget
so
history.
So it's a tradition, basically. It's something that's extra constitutional. So we don't have to have parties.
Right.
We could have multiple parties.
Right.
Or none.
Well, and if you look on the ballot, I mean, there are multiple parties. Just nobody has the mindset anymore that that's the case. I was just surprised that there's actually very rare do people do a split ballot. I do that every ballot. Honestly, I go per the person.
Don't you think that reflects more what a counselor would be like? In other words, that we have to be able to see both sides?
Interestingly enough, probably so through our eyes. I think that's probably true.
I do split ballot.
Yeah.
I do
always
not.
have. You do not? Well,
Most of the time, no.
okay. Yeah, I just thought that was the norm, and I was surprised to find that it maybe isn't the norm. But Kasie, have you seen that? Because that was my surprise thought of reality. I mean, have you seen that entering into the clinical realm, like clinical issue with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very much a valid experience. So I do want to make that blanketed statement that I think that people are having visceral reactions to the political climate and for valid reasons. I think that there's a lot of scare tactics that go on in the media and otherwise. I think you're being fed a lot of political agenda information from both sides of the aisle. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think the access points of social media, everyone has a phone. It immediately comes to you. It's readily available to you. You can't open an email. You can't open a text message. You can't open anything without it being physically present in front of your face. And so I think for most people, it's a daunting, overwhelming, and political experience that really affects them on a personal and emotional level. I think that is one of the differences from the 90s, right? Like coming into the age of the internet, coming into the age of social media, coming into the age of even computerized voting, right? Like that was a big ordeal that happened. So I do see it in the space, and I think that people are having legit, valid feelings about it.
Absolutely. And along those lines, I'm curious to hear your all's response to my theory and belief about how our psyche very much influences our experience with political realities. And that has a lot to do with the world's experience with 9/11. I've said this when we talk about social media and the things that our field is grappling to deal with, with what?
I mean, I was walking to a freshman speech and communication class during 9/11, so.
Oh, jeez, we're going there again?
Sorry, I mean, I just laughed to myself, so.
No, you laughed out loud.
Sorry.
No, but what I mean by that is, right, so if you think of the history of man, that's the first time that essentially we all, not everyone, so I say all loosely there, but pretty daggum close, we all watched all around the world those events in real time the whole day.
Yeah.
When has that ever happened? Ever. And I don't believe that the human psyche, that we've wrapped our arms around how to deal with this. And I think we're really struggling to grasp our internal coping, our internal resiliency, our internal emotion, our anger, our fear, our very specific things come out in this that, as you say, Kasie, visceral for people. It's doing something to us.
Yeah, and I think too it's important to denote that, the party platforms that are self-created have changed and adapted over time. So like conservatives of the 1980s are not conservatives today. So like it's not the same experience. Same thing with Democrats. There used to be a sector of the population called Southern Democrats, right? And Reagan-crats and all of that stuff. Like even when I was younger, coming up and voting in like kindergarten, there was a whole like political agenda that even started in elementary school. And I think that climate has shifted and changed based on what has erupted on the forefront or the precipice of people's brains. I really believe in a lot of ways we didn't pay attention to a lot of these things until 9/11. And then it hit us in the face and everyone then started paying attention. Everyone then had a vested interest in things like the Middle East. Because, when we came through the first Gulf War and we had 0 casualties under the first Bush administration, like there was...
Or very few casualties.
Very few, sorry. Yeah, limited casualties from the first Gulf War. Like it was more of a patriotic experience during that period of time, right? And then, you fast forward to 9/11 and then we're completely divided, split, polarized about what to do in response to the events of 9/11. And I think the polarization of that has really created a climate where it is person for themselves and then person against person.
Well, if you look, it's interesting. It's just such a fascinating thing that our field has got to catch up on in studying and understanding and managing these realities. Because as I was listening to you, what occurs to me is, isn't it a personal experience that you're watching this? Isn't it the way that we're consuming this? It's much more like in our regular thoughts and in our face. So I think more than it has been historically for man.
Yeah, but I mean, in the triangle of trauma, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago. We often talk about in the triangle of trauma, we talk about the aggressor and we talk about the victim. But what we've neglected to talk about a lot of times is the witness. And that's the truth of what's happening right now is we are all witnesses to what is happening in our world. And our political biases, our political thoughts, our political feelings are coming from that witness mentality of seeing what is happening to ourselves, our neighbors, our parents, what's going to happen to our children. It forces us into a situation that's almost anxiety provoking from the get-go because it's forcing us to think about the future instead of focusing so much on the present. Like what is going to happen 4 years from now? What is going to happen 2 years from now?
Because it's funny that you say it that way because foreshadowing, one of the things that we do to cope is stay mindful of the present.
Right.
Like that's directly flies in the face of what maybe we naturally fall into the trap of doing.
Well, I've lived since I've been reminded over and over again that I'm the old person. Okay.
Is that your good knee, John? Is that your good knee?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to her.
I remember when Kennedy was shot. And I know exactly where I was. And we were in Nashville, Tennessee at a Burger King. And the state trooper had not even heard about it. We heard it on the radio. And for 4 days straight, we were in that, I would say, a traumatic event. Move on to Bobby Kennedy. I remember that when he got shot. In fact, I saw that on TV. And Martin Luther King Jr.
Right. There was a lot going on in the 60s and 70s.
And then also saw The Good Thing, which was the first man on the moon.
Right.
Yeah. And then later, Reagan getting shot.
I was there with Reagan.
Uh-huh.
Now, I was a kid when Reagan happened, but I don't recall people being able, even with the moon, like I think people were huddled around their radios. Right.
Well, we had TVs back then.
Right.
So.
But a lot of
my gosh, it wasn't in like the 30s.
Stop. Listen.
Dear Lord, he's making you old.
Stop.
It was black and white TV.
people were huddled around their radios
Yeah.
with different big events, even so far as like World Series games and things like that. But the consumption is different now.
And again, yes, the 2001, it was the trauma.
Yes.
Yeah, the trauma that was there.
It's vicarious trauma, Kasie, that you talk about often.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? And is that a big part of our political experience around the world now, is acting out on that vicarious trauma experience. And I think there are certainly elements of that. I mean, I see people in the streets all around the world, dealing with this visceral experiences. I mean, we just had in Great Britain, you good folks over there just had the Prime Minister debacle that just
preceded
blew
by
up.
the Queen's death.
Yeah, the Queen's death.
Certainly
too.
her death. Yes.
As the monarch of the country.
And here we are where I'm watching this. I mean, I'm engaged in this a little bit, right? Like, which is another foreshadowing I'll just put out because I think it's so important. You have got to limit your consumption of this content.
Amen.
I mean, you really do. That is a mental health coping requirement.
Marshall McLuhan talked about hot media and cold media. Okay. And hot media would be like television, for example. Now he didn't live long enough to see what was going on with computers and the internet and social media, but that's very, very hot. So that's blazing hot.
Right.
And I think that's part. And I think it has adjusted the way we think, how we has to make sides. We don't. Whereas if you used to read a newspaper, you could process it, and you could go into in-depth analysis and commentary.
Be mindful in the moment about it.
Be mindful in the moment, but we're not allowed to do that anymore. And we need to take a step back. Or
it's interesting,
steps.
John. Are we not allowed to, or is it? See, listen, there's a lot of fun in conspiracy thinking that's out there. There really is. I get like entertained by thinking of those things when I allow myself to do it, but I quickly pull back and be like, look, stop this. Because I wish we could misspell this effect that people get psychologically about the allure and the draw to believing stuff in a conspiracistic sort of way. Because, and I know you didn't mean this, John, at least I didn't interpret it that way, but we begin thinking about what are we allowed to do? Are we being controlled? Who's in control? Are they controlling me? A lot of control issues that we can go off on there too and whatnot. But I think instead of that, is this not some sort of psychologically fascinating characteristics that human beings haven't dealt with yet?
Well,
that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I was saying that we have agency. We can step back and do that.
Right.
But we don't a lot of times. We get caught up.
And there's nobody at fault for doing that. There's nobody that's causing that is my point. I mean, it's sort of a natural psychological process that we've engaged in some way.
And I think the issue that I have with the immediate access from the media is whoever is moderating your access to the media. So like there is even moderation over by different entities as to what you are fed based on the algorithms of the things that you look at. And so I think that's equally parts dangerous. You get a newspaper, right? Like back in the day, print media, you read it in a newspaper, you can have casual discord with somebody in conversation because they've processed it appropriately, you've processed it appropriately. We're not Googling facts about this person or that person. We're not automatically asking Alexa to tell us about this or asking
tell us
Google
what
things.
we want to hear.
Right. Or tell us exactly what we want to hear, because you can literally find a linked article to any opinion that you have. Yeah. And so now we can't even discord appropriately. And what I often talk about, even in couples therapy, which is a weird thing to bring into this, is that conflict is a great form of intimacy building between two people. Being able to have appropriate conflict resolution is a great way to build emotional intimacy. And the fact that we can no longer do that around certain subject matter without it ruining holidays, families, traditions, marriages, like we cannot discord appropriately or have.
Well, there's
conflict
whole
resolution.
families that are split because
Absolutely.
of that.
This
And
was part of my
generational.
brainstorm, Casey.
Yeah.
It's totally that.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Politics. It's a Greek word, ancient Greek, and it means
He moved us to the next
the-
segment. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're on it.
Work of the cities, and that the cities were small city states. There were not kings in Greece, 6th century, when all this started. The small city states, and there were people that were citizens of those states. They happened to be freed males of property, but it was the beginning of democracy, the limited democracy. But what's happened is they were supposed to be small.
You're right.
They would have jury trials that would have like 200 or 300 people involved in this. That was practically all the voting population of Athens, for example. But what's happened is we have, and it's a good thing, but we have spread that democracy to many places and to many people, and it's wonderful that we have that. But it's problematic that you're going to be able to actually operate
Try to do that on a mass scale.
on a mass scale. Yeah,
I also
Right.
think it's problematic that we automatically assume that every faction of the world wants that.
Absolutely.
I
I
mean,
was thinking the same.
I'm not trying to be like, ill-fated in any of that, but I think it is presumptuous to assume that this is what you need in your country all the time.
A little bit egocentric in our part to think that.
I mean,
that's
I
the
think
case.
democracy is great in concept. I mean, like I think people should be free to choose their leaders, but like I think we force it sometimes
Well-
where it doesn't need to be forced.
Well, and I think that we developed in our nation the idea of a republic, which was roughly based on an understanding of Rome and it being a republic. And you enfranchised more people gradually over the centuries, at least in the United States, where it went from just white males again who had property to a greater enfranchisement of people, freed slaves, for
Right.
example. And then 50 years later, women getting the right to vote, which seems to be in
Slow
Congress.
golf clap from Casey.
Yeah. And so we're being able to do that. But now we've gone to the idea of, we're a democracy. Well, yeah, we are, but we're a republic. We're a republic, representative.
Yep,
government.
representative democracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
My definition, what I come up with, and I think about this, is basically groups of people in operation together and the systems that are developed to do so. That is basically, in my mind, what politics are. You went Greek, and I liked the Greek definition I found on Google. The set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations among individuals, such as distribution of resources or status. But it's funny because we've warped this all a little bit, and Google's basic definition, the first thing came up. Listen to the difference: the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having to hope to achieve power. That's a crappy definition.
Well, it's
of politics.
You're at loggerheads with somebody.
How did we get there? Right? That's the question I want to propose. I gave my theory, but so this segment is politics good or bad? And I gotta say, it's crucial and it's good. I don't know about you, maybe I'm weird, but I like talking about this with people.
Oh, I definitely think that it's good. It's good to have political opinion. It's good to have political
Yes.
discourse. I think we are blessed and fortunate to live in a country where we will not be killed for our political opinion or thoughts.
Right.
That we're not dictated to be told you will choose this leader or no leader, but we're a democracy. That's not how it works here. And so I am very thankful for that. And with Veterans Day being tomorrow, I'm thankful for every person that has ever sacrificed their life, their family, their ability to be a civilian, to be able to protect those rights and freedoms. So I just
And we
wanna go
should
ahead
have
say
done that off the top of the show, frankly. Bad on me, because thank you also for voting. those that did. It's important.
Absolutely. But what I do think is really interesting about politics and how we got here is I do think that whenever there are things going on, the hot button political issues, which typically are divided into two categories, fiscal categories and social categories, right? So a lot of it is economics and a lot of it are hot button social issues.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you are automatically going to cause a divisive reaction in the country. Like there's not going to be a moderate way forward through any of those issues. Those issues are polarizing. So when they come up for debate and when they come up for discussion, there's not a way necessarily to move forward politically in that discussion without choosing a side. And if you land in the middle, you are no longer a friend to either person. And so that's what I think is hard about it, is that if you want to be more moderate or in the center periphery, people are going to attempt to pull you in one direction or the other. And with our current political climate, what you have to do in a two-party system a lot of times is that either you vote for the independent where you feel like your vote doesn't matter, or you have to then align yourself with other things that you're weary of in order to vote for a candidate that's more in alignment with what you're in alignment with.
So in other words, it's a coalition.
It is.
Of getting people together.
I disagree, I think.
Go for it.
Let's dance.
I mean, we can all night, sugar.
I think here's what I mean. As you were talking, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm there. I mean, think about a marriage couple, and we do this all the time, and finances come up in marriage couple. I would like to believe, and I have seen and participate in financial discussions that aren't this side or that side. And that's one of the things that I love about Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. He takes the emotions of the issue, which we all know tears couples up. I mean, it is divisive a lot of the times. It is I'm right, you're wrong kind of a mentality. But what do we do in couples counseling? That's why I thought, your marriage thing, I mean, I was totally a part of my brainstorm with this topic. Mm-hmm. Can we not have a conversation about Social Security where we're all engaged in the conversation with the common goal of what's the best option here? You have some good ideas with this system. I have some good ideas with this system. And I think this is why we have the split party that always happens after we vote in a particular party. We then go and split up the House so it's a different party. Like, people like that in our government. I know that has been found in surveys. We can have those discussions and we can get to a place where we can have respect and kindness and caring and love while we have those discussions. Could we do that in marriages successfully?
I mean, on a micro level, you can.
Yeah, well,
but on a macro level, no, I don't agree, because on a macro level, one, there's a lot of things that can unfold here, right? And I don't want to get into the weeds about career politicians and things like that. There's a lot of things that can transpire from this conversation. But on a macro level, at some point, there is a choice that we make when we vote. And that choice is based on how we personally feel about the candidate's platform on the issues that I'm talking about. Like, that's how you vote. You can't sit there and say, well, this person looks like they would converse really well with this other person across the aisle. Let me figure out if they're going to be able to have conversation.
Okay, you're saying as the citizen, it places us in the position of...
Right. So I think on a micro level, we can have those discourses and conversations. On a macro level, you really do have to think about the impact of what your choice is going to have on the total country as a whole when you're voting.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying a little bit, but we're still looking for our leaders to do that a little bit. John, what are you thinking of?
Well, I was going back to Social Security, and
because you're the only one of us that's on it. And I was kidding.
Not yet.
I'm just joking.
Not yet. Getting there.
We may not even get it. So, like,
whatever. Hey, you know what? I deserve it.
You do.
I paid into it.
You do.
Okay.
Let me make a quick point before you go, John.
Uh-huh.
And the reason being, and again, another foreshadowing to sprinkle into our conversation. Can we not laugh about this stuff and have humor and have fun like we just did? It diminishes the energy and visceral nature of what it is that you're talking about. You were too, sir.
So I was laughing. But I was going to go back to the mid 2000s, and George W. Bush offered a Social Security idea, and it was in the middle. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, people on both sides obliterated him. He lost a lot of support,
really?
And a lot of political capital.
I do not recall this, but it's fine. Yeah.
Well, you were just a youngster then.
With Bush Sr. or Jr.?
Junior.
Yeah, no, I wasn't a youngster.
Yes, you were. You were like 30 or something.
Okay, well, I paid attention. That's a youngster then.
Victoria's
a baby.
I'm pulling your chain, youngster.
Yeah.
But that was a big controversy, and he got obliterated for it. Mm-hmm. And he was seen as somebody, you're trying to take away Social Security for the seniors. And the other people said, well, this isn't far enough, and it needs to be privatized. Well, the reality is that we're now kicking the can down the road, and in fact, Casey's generation may not get Social Security because the fact we didn't make the hard choices 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Because that was an argument even in the 80s when you were just really a kid.
So how do we get to a place where, and Kasie, I guess I would come back to you and ask, right? Like, how then do we as citizenry, kind of manage the mental health with that? If you do feel, and now that I understand your point a little better, in that position or in that role a little bit, like there's got to be, and maybe I'm getting ahead of us, but some coping with that because that's tough.
There does. And so I think that, like, from my perspective as a therapist, like, it's really about delving into the undercurrent of the issues. Like, what is it that is personally activating you towards these topics? Like, when I have somebody in office, they're clearly scared about the political impact, about their family, what it means for them, what it means for the future. Then we kind of delve into taking politics almost out of the equation and talking about what are the actual issues here. It's really easy, and to be honest, as a white heterosexual female, to have my own assumptions and talk about my own politics in my life, because my experiences are vastly different than anybody else that would be outside of my demographic. Just like your experiences and just like John's experiences, even the three of us in this room, we're not even fairly representing the vast majority of the United States of America, right?
I guess you're not in the room, Neil.
Sorry, Neil. Neil's also here, but the four of us in this space, we don't even like demographically represent everyone that votes or everyone that has an agenda or issue or things that are really hot button topics. And so I think it's a human emotional experience to almost take politics out of it so that we can connect on a humanistic level and talk about what is really going on with you. Because the truth is that our politics may be different, but our emotional experience can be very congruent in a space to be able to talk through what it is that you're dealing with.
And people have lost the ability to cope with
yes.
that, to some extent.
Yes.
I would maintain. Interesting. Let me move to a quick little section that I wanted to do with the question for our conversation. Again, I see the way politics are in the way that I defined it earlier. So, in a way, we've all studied group dynamics. Mm-hmm. We know this from our groups class, right? And our coursework and our research and training. Is this not like group dynamics, basically 101 as sociology 101 on a macro level? I mean, you remember forming, storming, norming, performing, right?
Yes.
Oh, she says blah. Right? But
Gerald Corey.
That's
Corey, group dynamics.
Group dynamics.
Yeah. I have that book on my shelf.
You have Yalom too?
Yeah, I got Yalom.
I really FaceTimed him with a group from my graduate class. Irv Yalom.
Only a therapist would be wide open, eyes excited about FaceTiming with Yalom.
I met Corey.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's super cool.
He came to my my presentation.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, these are real people, right?
And very nice, gentle. He and his wife are very gentle, wonderful, authentic people.
Think of these listed things of group dynamics. So the listening audience obviously didn't take classes or meet Yalom and all this stuff. But it's like, look at this through this lens for a moment. Just listen to these concepts, right? That we work with in groups. Like when we lead groups, therapy groups, oftentimes therapists are great at your Cub Scouts or various organizations that we are engaged in. I mean, your therapeutic knowledge, John, makes you an amazing pastor, I'm sure, with the group because we've studied this stuff. So listen, groupthink is a concept in groups. Power exchange in groups with informal power and formal power, the group norms that you develop, the group rules that you develop, those stages of group development that Kasie went blah on. Forming it, storming, norming, performing, celebration, and finishing. Those are like in the life of the group what happens. Group roles, your role in the group. Levels of cohesiveness, right? From the article, I forgot some. There's a cool article that we have. They pointed out how to turn groups into effective teams. We deal with clearing expectations. We deal with clearing up the level of commitment and dealing with levels of competence. No Biden jokes, please. Control, collaboration, communication, creativity, and coordination.
That was a lot of alliteration that you just did there.
Well, we're not going to do a class on group dynamics here for our Through a Therapist's Eyes tribe because it would be too much time. But my point is, we know, and you can research these things. I got a couple cool articles that'll give you really good basis points of the spine and skeletal system of how do groups work. We know this. Can we not apply this to how we've gotten off a track with this in our politics?
No.
Why?
Because of all the external influences. You know, we often talk in therapy about internal and external locuses of control. And again, I don't want to divert the conversation and start talking about the things that are outside of the political realm that influence the political realm. But I think that is part of the issue is that, one, we don't have appropriate ways to discourse. So on an individual level, we can get better politically in talking about politics. On a macro level, I think that's exponentially difficult because he who holds the money holds the power. And that's what influences the platforms. That's what influences even down to the debate. In presidential psychology, I can tell you that down to the tie that you wear and the contrast it has to your shirt is a big point of inference, even when you go on a politicized debate on TV. So when we are at that level of specificity in trying to influence votes, in trying to influence individuals and how to vote, when we're canvassing neighborhoods, when we have ex-professional athletes calling people on the phone to say you need to go vote, when we have people out of state calling you on the phone, say give $40 to this campaign in Georgia because we need this seat, like that is a problem. I could go on forever. I will not, but that's a
John,
problem.
what are you thinking with your
to affect that
academic sociology kind of thinking there?
Well, I understand, Kasie, what you're saying, but that's been going on forever since the media. And I talked about McLuhan earlier because he was very much involved with that understanding in terms of does the person, for example, back in 1960 with the debate between Kennedy and Nixon.
Yeah.
He perspired. He sweat. He was everywhere. And people did not like it because, and he had this 5 o'clock shadow. And here was Jack Kennedy, and he was just handsome, photogenic, and all of that. So it's been going on for 60 years, essentially. Yeah.
Honestly, I would submit to you that a lot of this is nothing new. I think the politics in Roman times, probably operated a lot of that.
What toga
same
did you
stuff,
wear?
Right?
Yeah.
How shiny is your sword? What is your, whatever.
What are your sandals?
Right. That this is group dynamics. This is the way that we operate.
Exactly.
People forget how not new that is.
One of the things, but there's also a cycle that I see in history, and there was, for example, Donald Trump. He admired who? A president. Which president?
And I was going to say himself.
Well, he was the great. Yeah, no
political statement there.
No. I mean,
No,
That
it's
wasn't
Andrew,
political sense.
Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson was this wilderness guy. He was out from the frontier, which was Tennessee, and he came in, and he was the hero of the Battle of New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so he quelled the uprisings in Florida between the Native Americans there and in Georgia. There were raids going on, and he went down in there. And so that was going on. And then after he left, the Whigs came into power.
Yeah.
And things were very conservative and very mild. And then of course it ran up into the Civil War, and then there was
I can look at from the very first president we had in the States. The George Washington was probably our first president because he was tall in stature, very clean cut, very well dressed, very mannered.
I don't think he was very tall.
Am I wrong? No,
I thought he
pretty
was
sure
6'3".
he was.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was a very tall of stature dude. That's why the rabble that was the Revolution Army. I mean, they were a rabble. They barely had uniforms, and he would strive in and boom, the appearance was stark.
He was physically brave, and that
there's a lot of other things go with it too.
I'm
sure, but my point is this isn't new, people. We get so fearful about some of these things, and it's just, to me, it's good old-fashioned group dynamics. It's the way that human beings operate together.
But see, I think that simplifies it too much for some people that I have in my office.
Maybe needed, Casey.
I mean, maybe so, because, and I said my house, but I mean my office. But
you see clients at your house?
Oh, dear.
Negative, ghostwriter. Negative.
Let's talk about that.
Negative ghostwriter. But the reason why I feel like it simplifies it too much is because I think, and maybe you are going to make this point, but I do think that the political climate of today has so many variances of issues. And I wasn't alive during civil rights, so I don't know, during that movement, what that was like to be in the political climate.
And you mean, of course, the thrust of civil rights.
The thrust of civil rights, in the 60s, right. But what I do know is that when people's rights are called into question, when people's bodies are called into question, when all of those hot political, social agenda issues are called into question, it is not emotionally safe for some people. It does not feel emotionally secure and emotionally safe for a lot of people today. And I understand when they come to me why they are having visceral reactions based on the inputs that they're getting.
Secondary trauma.
Trauma, yeah.
Visceral experiences.
It is
to trauma.
Because what happens today will impact me tomorrow, or will impact my kids, or could impact myself, or could impact my relationship. Is my marriage going to be valid? Are my children going to be accepted? Is this adoption going to be legitimized because it was to a same-sex couple? There's so many emotionally charging issues that are happening. The thing that ticks me off about the political arena is they use a lot of that stuff to keep you emotionally charged.
Because it sells.
Because it sells, and because it is a good way to sneak in secondary issues. And that's not a conspiracy theory. This is actually legit truth. When I was on a political committee at Western Carolina University, go Catamounts, we got tacked on to a bill at the state level where NC State was making a centennial campus, and we were going to make a millennial campus, and we just shoved policy in there and got it approved. And that's what happens is you keep them focused on one thing, and then you just start undermining everything else.
So in other words, you use distraction.
Right. The techniques of distraction. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is part, again, of human behavior. This is not... I think part of what I'd like to accomplish with this show is to bring everybody's temperature down a little bit in realizing that, look, this is human beings being human beings. We're still human beings, and we still do the things that human beings do. Mm-hmm. And this is the way that we interact, and it's not neat and pretty and tidy like we would like to myopically think that it would be. It's rocky, it's messy, you go back and forth, and that's okay. That's okay.
Now here's an observation.
Okay.
Okay. West Virginia and Kentucky were coal mining producing areas.
Yes.
And the constituency of Joe Biden, for example, is that we're not going to do any fracking. We're not going to do any more drilling. Now, that's not necessarily. I'm just stating.
Paraphrasing.
Paraphrasing.
broadly.
Just paraphrasing.
Okay. It's going to be very careful about that.
Because we in West Virginia don't like him around here when they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That was
part
a
of
joke.
that is people's livelihoods are at stake, and that was
indeed.
my point.
Okay.
And so there are going to be people that may not be attracted to, let's say, an authoritarian type of presidential
Very
leader.
triggered, to use a word.
Get very true, yeah. But they will say, I have to support this person because that person will defend my right to make a living.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
my
that's what I was
ability to
speaking
do
to
that.
earlier is that, yes,
Yeah.
you can say all day, like, I am, I'm going to be moderate about this. I'm going to think through this and things like that. But at the end of the day, if it
When those issues come up.
it messes with your bank account, your bedroom, your church, your school, or your livelihood, you are going to be charged.
And I think that may be one reason why COVID was such a problem.
Correct.
And the thing
Correct.
that's going on right now with abortion is really bubbling up in a big way. Okay, look. So real quick, I want to say, what is the?
I'm
what is
right,
the-
you're wrong.
Boom.
Right.
Mic drop on that.
I know, right?
Closing
That's-
statements.
Yeah. So what is the problem? And then I want you guys to think about, we have some good time to really focus on, what do the therapists say about coping with mental health? But first, what is the problem? It was interesting, this article, Kasie, that I found, because the title, the part of this article that I was checking out entitles, How the Stress of Political Upheaval Erodes Resilience.
Correct.
Right, and that was a cool thing. And they said, what are the real problems? Fatigue.
What was the name of that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Somewhere in Newport News.
No, it was okay.
Yeah. So from the article, they point out the problem parts. Again, you guys are thinking about what are really the therapeutic suggestions you would make. We've talked about some, but fatigue, apathy, languishing, increased substance abuse, anger and irritation, problems sleeping, chronic pain, trouble concentrating, volatile emotions, decreased motivation, depression, of course, anxiety and worrying. Like these are what the outcomes are. This is why people are so glad that all these daggum articles or all advertisements are over. Except for the poor people down in Georgia. We were saying, right?
It's a rainy night in Georgia.
They got a whole another month to
Get
go
on the
with
midnight
this
train and
stuff.
come to North Carolina. We're done.
They got to change that statute down there, boy, I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But, folks, this is real. And the point is, we are seeing this clinically now more, and I think we all agreed, than we ever had before. Something's going on that we need to research and understand on the emotional level for the individual person. So what are some of the solutions? What do you guys have off the top of your heads? What do we do about this? How do we cope, right?
Take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to take a break, and I think once you get kind of addicted to, you kind of get addicted to the adrenaline rush that comes with saying you get your blood pressure up in a negative way or in a positive way, but it still has the same effect on the body and it takes a toll. And so one thing I would advise is just step back.
Got
If
to.
you could step back and don't pick up the phone. Don't only use the phone for what it was originally intended, as God intended it, as a phone, instead of using it with a smart screen.
God intended it that way?
It was intended to be
That's
a phone.
right. God created
Okay, what?
You can see it in the
Yeah.
Sistine Chapel.
My-
But my point is to really take a break.
It's huge. It's my number one suggestion.
Yeah.
peppered
I would
in
also
earlier.
say check yourself before you wreck yourself.
You love that phrase, don't
I
you?
love that phrase because it's so true. It's so true.
So you're eloquent.
Because the truth is that before you make a post, before you pick up the phone, before you put it out there, check in with yourself and ask yourself, where am I right now and why am I feeling this way?
Well, I would agree with you on that because I have students that are very passionate, and they will, or if they feel something is, or they think something is unfair or unjust, they'll just write down exactly what they think immediately and send it off, and they can get in trouble for that.
Yeah. And I would even go to say, like, I've been parts of groups before where we've disagreed politically, and on their individual social medias posting things that are really innocent things to post, but posting things like, if you believe this way, we're not friends. But I'm your friend, and I see you post this on your social media.
And we just talked about it.
So how do I feel now
Yeah.
that you're making a public and very visible statement that if you're not this, then we're not this?
See,
And
that's
so I think
honestly
you've
my
gotta
second.
check yourself. Yeah.
It's my second biggest component, I think, in suggestion is the same thing with social medias and stuff. There's this human phenomenon since around 2001 with 9/11 and around the world we've all experienced this of connecting with, talking about, using our primary mechanism of expression through a screen. I don't think that's bad. Let me be clear about my suggestion here. That is a very fine, appropriate, and wonderful thing to do. I am not
But
a
not in the
technology
same
fearful. Well, yeah, probably not in the same room. Say it out loud. But no, but we have got to learn how to do that. Check yourself before you wreck yourself is the way you're putting that, Kasie. And people will say things on the screen that they wouldn't say in person.
They're keyboard warriors.
A social media rule that we have got
Trolling.
to learn is that you only say on there what you would say face to face, and really pay attention to yourself about that.
Are you saying we should have some filters?
Yes, for crying
Have
out
you
loud.
seen my photos? They're all filtered.
Oh dear.
Just kidding.
Perfect.
You see with me just this big light shining.
just
on
Very
my
unfiltered,
forehead.
right?
Unfiltered. Yeah.
Those are really important suggestions. I think, in interest of time, because I have the power of cheating, and you guys have to be caught cold. Where is it at? So my list of thought about this was thinking about conflict resolution. Marriage, friendships, business partners. Where we tend to struggle. These are sort of a microcosm I want you to think about in the way of how do you manage these topics. Limits are crucial in today's world. That was on my brainstorm, and I think we all hit that, John, you up front. Do face-to-face conversations, all caps, I said only. I don't know that I want to totally stand by that because social media could be great in using it appropriately. We just have no idea psychologically how to do that as human beings yet because it's so new. So stay patient. We're learning. Vote. If you're in a place where you can around the world. And if you think about it, this provides empowerment. This provides an exercise of control. Guess what that does to your mental health? Voting actually improves your mental health, I would maintain.
I would agree.
Right?
Definitely.
Taking actions otherwise, again.
You see the common
bleeds
humanity. If you're standing in a line and you're voting, you share that common humanity, and whether they agree with you or not, there's that humanity there.
And you know what's funny, John? I didn't say this because I was afraid of the time, but I'll go back to it in my random thoughts off the get-go. How did I write that? Finding it real quick. Do you feel a part of the group? Well, then you're good to go. You're part of the country. If you're active, you're at least a part of it. You're going to feel a lot better. If you feel apart from the group, you're doomed. I'm helpless. I don't want to vote. I'm inundated with all this stuff. I don't want to party. It's terrible. You're doomed because you're isolated and you're alone. Is what we're highlighting there. Just to finish my list, join other groups as to not be alone. Again, I think we feel so alone, and then practicing a concept of acceptance. One more, John, and this actually comes from you. The last thing on my brainstorm that actually came from our marriage group or marriage discussion that we had. You said the foundations of marriage were, do you remember? Service.
Service, yeah.
Right? If we as a group, whatever country you might be, wherever you are around the world, if we come at this from a place of service, your political discussions, thought process, emotional experience is going to be way better. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's battled with greed, which probably way more common. What do y'all think? Does that trigger any thoughts, John? They had some thoughts, or what is?
No,
this
I
trigger
was just
move around
thinking.
for you?
Tomorrow is Veterans Day, and the VA itself, funnily enough, will be closed. But when I go to the VA for many of my appointments, I see people that are have high and tights. I see people that have long hair. I've seen people that have had.
You said high and tights.
Yeah.
Like the box cut high and tight.
Yeah.
I don't even. Oh, high
Like
and
a
tight
Marine,
haircuts. Okay,
like a
sorry.
Marine Corps haircut,
I'm
as
with you
it
now.
should
Sorry.
be,
Took a moment.
as it should be, and but I've also had veterans that have had gender reassignment.
Right.
And the thing is that we've all been in a common vision of America, and we have believed in its principles. We didn't just do it to get an education, though that some people say that, but we did it to serve our country, something greater than ourselves. And we need to do that more in our civil life as well. And so I have service. I have many brothers and sisters that have served in the military, and I'm not related to them by blood or color. I'm related to them because we followed a common principle of service, of something greater than ourselves.
John, I usually think about summing up the show, but I think honestly, I want to honor that by saying that is a perfect summary. And again, thank you for your service. I can't think of a better way. I know we might be a few minutes early, but I think that's honestly the way that we need to end, sir.
Amen.
Thank you for that. Guys, we got through the political system, the events. Soon enough, Georgia will be done, and around the world, you do yours. Thank you, John, once again. Guys, take care. And
thank you, guys.
Yeah.